her journey. Very good, very good. I got it. Wait, let's see. Okay, I got it. So our guest today, well, let me start over again. Welcome. Thank you all for joining the session, especially because I'm leading it and not Helen. So I'm like really honored that you guys have the faith that, I'm going to carry this out. So I appreciate that. It's like so much confidence in me. Oh, I had no idea. If somebody had asked me like a couple of years ago, would I be doing this kind of stuff? I'm like, are you crazy? I had no idea. Well, I guess none of us really know what our capacity is until you be put in a situation. But Helen has a way of stretching my capacity. If I didn't know what it was, she has some sense of it. So I just wanted to tell you that. So basically today, our guest is Yvonne Patterson. Yvonne, I missed your middle name. Did I miss something? Yvonne Garrett-Patterson. I'm looking at your little name. Put both of them up there so you don't confuse me. And, I just want to say that Yvonne is on this amazing journey that really, if it doesn't impact us individually, it has impacted your parents, especially if you lived anywhere in this country in a predominantly Black community. I'm sure that you've had the experience of and when she talks about the 1949 Housing Act, Federal Housing Act. Back in the day, we called it Urban Renewal. I'm sorry, Negro Removal. And she's going to talk about her journey. She's going to talk about how she came to this journey, and particularly her grandfather. Her grandfather he passed away at 104 years old. He had a pharmacist. He was a pharmacist. He had the pharmacy for 70 years, and he was moved, right? And was not able to come back. And it's my position, especially since I know that the human body could last 120 years if we take care of it. And I do have a picture. I can't send it. If I can, well, I can't. But if I could, I wanted to show you these Black women at a slave convention in 1916. And there's one of them in this picture. She's 125 years old and she doesn't have a cane. The youngest one, 104, has a cane, but the oldest one, 125. So if the body's good for 120 years, she's 5 years past that. And think about what she went through as a chattel slave, and to be living at 125 years without a cane. Yes. It tells you the water was cleaner, the air was cleaner, and there were minerals in our food, other than Monsanto. So having said that, because it wouldn't be right if I didn't, add that kind of stuff to it. Yvonne's definitely been on a serious journey, and I did want to talk a little bit about how I met her, because a month ago I didn't even know Yvonne. I was actually being interviewed by this program called All Politics Are Local in Newark, and didn't know I was going to be interviewed. Got a call 2 days before that, and they wanted me to talk about what's happening in Jackson, Mississippi regarding the apartheid, the obvious apartheid, because actually in this country there's a whole bunch of apartheid happening in communities around this country, but I always say that it's under the cloak of the Ku Klux Klan cloak, so we don't really know. But what happened in Jackson, Mississippi is truly American apartheid. So having said that, I met Yvonne. I was on this call to talk about, what's happening in Jackson, Mississippi, and they had asked me to do something on Women's History Month, but it just worked out. They had contacted Yvonne. And so she came on to talk about Women's, Black History Month, because she was having a program in the Women's Assembly, and she'll tell you a little bit about that when she talks about some of the things she does. And she said, I'd really be happy to have you come and join in on this assembly. So I said, okay. This was on Friday night. On Sunday, she calls me Sunday afternoon. She says, I'm just calling to follow up. I'm like, okay. And while we're talking, I get a call from some of you know about Professor Gloria Brown Marshall, who does the program Law of the Land, of which I do guest hosting for her on occasion. Well, Gloria calls me in the middle of my call with Yvonne. In the middle of the call, she says, can you cover for me on Tuesday morning? Hold on a second. So I say, Yvonne, Yvonne, can you, because she was telling me the story that she's going to tell you guys and share the story she's going to tell you guys about. And I said, it's a good story. Can you come on Tuesday morning? This was what, Sunday afternoon, like around 3 or 4 o'clock. We're in the middle of her telling me her journey about her grandfather. And I said, oh, this is a good story. Can you come on Tuesday morning? So I interviewed her in Gloria Brown Marshall's program, which is in the archives of BAI. So, but she has more time this time. I think we only had we really needed 2 hours, but we had about almost 40 minutes, and she really did a good job. And it was just amazing. And I'm into real estate anyway. I think that's important for us to know about. But her story is just, and her grandfather, I don't even know him. And I feel like he and I have met each other. No, seriously, when I heard his story, I said, we just missed each other by a few. But I'm sure that he and I are going, yeah. I feel like, we've known each other before I even knew Yvonne, but her grandfather and the conversation he's going to tell you about is amazing. So anyway, again, for those of you just joining us, welcome, welcome, welcome. Yvonne Garrett-Patterson is going to be speaking, and she's going to talk about the 1949 Negro Removal Act. I know it's called something else, but I think that has the most impact. And if you weren't here when I said it, it impacts all of us. If you think about, and it's not only impacting us from 1949, 1950s, 1960s, but the gentrification is really an extension of it. And what she's asking for is, I guess you could say this is a category underneath reparations. When she and I had the conversations earlier last week, because we've known each other 2 weeks now, she, I felt that this is part of reparations. This is a restitution part of reparations. So on that note, I'm going to let Yvonne tell you a little bit about her, and then she's going to talk about her conversation with her grandfather, and then, talk about the status and what's happening. And go ahead, Yvonne, you can have it. It's all yours.
Wow. Well, Professor, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I think it's because we're cousins. I think probably my grandfather's your great uncle. That's probably what it is. I believe that, but it is an honor to be with you all today. My goodness, when Black women chat, this is incredible. Not only when Black women chat, but when Black women come into agreement in terms of what's needed, and take action, so we can demonstrate, what's possible, because that's what time it is now. We need to be able to come together, unify, and demonstrate what's possible as a unified body. And so I want to press into that, and anyone who's in agreement with that, let's do some sidebar talking about action that we need to take collectively, because that's what's going to make the difference. We can point to what's wrong, but really it's about what we do to bring change is what's needed at this point. So thank you, Professor. It's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be with everybody today. I mean, incredibly, oh my goodness, the gifts, the talents, the abilities, the experience that's on this line. I mean, my goodness gracious, what we can do with that collective ability is just, it staggers my mind to think about what can be accomplished if we all pull together and work together for the common good of community, right? So thank you for taking time and being available to talk about this subject. So a little journey. I was 8 years old, living in Durham, North Carolina, and my grandmother said to me, Yvonne, the drugstore is not going to be here much longer because Urban Renewal is coming. And I didn't know what Urban Renewal was. I thought it was a person. No one explained what Urban Renewal was. I didn't have any idea. But certainly several years later, what my grandmother said rang true. My grandfather was a pharmaceutical doctor. He graduated at Howard, received his doctorate degree in 1920s, mid-1920s. He was a son of a merchant, Dizer, who was in Tarboro, North Carolina. My great-grandfather was given a business by a white retail owner because he could not live in that environment any longer. He had to go to a drier climate because of his health. And because my great-grandfather was a faithful employee to him, he got the benefit and the inheritance of the business. And so my grandfather was raised in a business owner family and was exposed to managing and producing retail development in a predominantly white environment in Tarboro, North Carolina. So that was his foundation. My great-great-grandfather was a slave. And so, certainly that was our background. But my grandfather went on and received his doctorate degree from Howard University, came back to Tarboro, North Carolina, established a drugstore in Tarboro as a pharmaceutical doctor, and then came to Durham, North Carolina, where he established 2 drugstores in the mid to late 1920s. My grandfather was extremely faithful. He got up every morning, early morning, and went to the drugstore, worked from 9 in the morning until 11 at night. With a break in the middle, he would come home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, where my grandmother every day would fix an extraordinary meal, and we would sit down and have dinner at 3 o'clock. And then my grandfather would take a nap and then go back to the drugstore and work till 11 o'clock at night. That happened for 7 decades. He was faithful in his work ethic. My father became a pharmacist as well, and it became a family-owned business. My cousin Garrett Parker also was a pharmacist in the business. So it was a family-owned business and existed for 70 years. Going forward, my grandfather turned 100 years old, and we were there in Durham visiting him for his 100th birthday. And the day after his birthday, he was sitting in the sitting room, and he was quiet and despondent, and that's not his personality. He's very gregarious, very engaging, a lot of personality, a lot of just a fun-loving, engaging person. But this day he was solemn and removed, and I came into the house and I saw him sitting there, and I saw him in this solemn condition, and I asked the question, "Granddaddy, what's wrong?" And the first thing that he said to me in giving me a response was, "They said that they would build it back." That was his response to me. And I didn't know what he was referencing, but then he began to explain to me that the city leaders and the federal government came into the Black community of Durham, North Carolina, and convinced the business owners to give up their location under the guise that Urban Renewal was going to redevelop the area, and they were going to redevelop it and bring the businesses back into that community. So in other words, they uprooted the businesses, moved them out of the neighborhood, and promised that they would build it back and bring those businesses back. That never happened. My grandfather's location, it was a mixed-use facility. It not only housed the drugstore, but the Garrett Biltmore Hotel was on the same site. There were close to 500 businesses in Durham alone that were displaced through Urban Renewal. So going forward, the location that my grandfather was located in became a parking lot for the next 30 years. It never got rebuilt. And then 4 years ago, a developer out of New York convinced the Durham city leaders to sell the property to them. And now sitting on that property is a eight-story business complex. There's not a sign or marker that my grandfather ever existed, nor the other 500 businesses in Durham alone. That coupled with cities throughout the South, throughout the North, actually, this is not a scenario that was just specific to Durham. It happened throughout the country, where urban centers that were predominantly African-American run, owned, where people lived and where it was productive, now don't exist. And when we look at the gap, the wealth gap widening during that period of time, we have not recovered economically. We were much better off pre-civil rights in terms of our economic development than we are now. And so my grandfather said to me that they promised that they would build it back. And so that has set me on a quest. My grandfather lived to be 104, and I could not shake this word promise that he shared with me that day. And I began to do research on the Housing Act of 1949, 1954, with the hope that we can create an amendment to that act that would address the urban renewal promise that was made and not kept. And so I am proposing the U.S. Urban Renewal Promise Act for urban economic redevelopment and recovery, because we need to recover what we've lost. We need to pursue and recover what is been lacking in our community for the last now 40 years. And so this is an act that needs to be addressed. I began lobbying with educational institutions to talk with urban development departments in various institutions, was able to get an audience with University of Richmond, and they began to lobby with me. We've created a movie called Raised. It is on YouTube, and it chronicles the issues that Durham experienced in urban renewal, urban removal, but it also chronicles Charlottesville, Virginia, had the same similar scenario. And so the film, I would encourage you all to watch the film because it tells the story of urban removal, urban renewal, and the need to restore and recover. And wealth is inherited. And so when there is no wealth, there is no inheritance. In terms of economics, certainly there can be cultural, certainly there can be character and cultural transferals. But when economic systems are disrupted, then there is little opportunity to pass on economic inheritance onto the next generations. And so that's been disrupted through this urban renewal issue. It has dismantled our economic sovereignty, which has to be recovered. And the government made a promise. I went and did research on the Urban Renewal, Housing, and Urban Development Department, and in that discovery, it was stated that they missed the mark in terms of the economic impact that urban renewal had on the African American community. So there is documentations that they admit that they failed in their effort. And because of that, it needs to be corrected. And so I have been pursuing a public and congressional hearing on this subject to bring our congressional leaders to bear on this subject and develop legislation that corrects the issue. But we first need to understand what needs to be corrected. And so each community that's been impacted by urban renewal, the leaders of those communities need to talk about how do we recover? What are the steps for recovery? What needs to be restored, actually? And every community is different. We have similar needs. Certainly, we need to make sure that education is rooted and grounded in the communities that have been impacted, that we have economic development, workforce development, entrepreneurship development, so that people are trained and given the tools necessary so that they can restore community. So each community will look differently in their restoration initiative, but this is an opportunity to bring the greater community together in different states across our nation to present what their restoration plan would look like, so that it's tailored to meet the needs of individual communities. That's kind of a broad overview. Certainly there's more specifics involved, but this is a pursue and recover all effort. And if we don't get it. So there's a real desire to bring together and to unify so that there's a demonstration that the community as a whole is working together for the betterment and the restoration of our neighborhoods and our urban centers where we live as African Americans, as well as people of color. So that's my general initial overview, Professor, and thank you so much for the opportunity to communicate this important initiative and getting feedback in terms of strategies in which we can be effective to recover the promise that was made.
Well, we still have people joining us, so let me just kind of go back for a second. obviously your grandfather had a great impact on you. And if you could just tell people a little bit, and we'll come back to it, a little bit about people who have sought him out and interview him, and where people might be able to get information where they can actually hear him say what he has, some of the things that he said, because I know you sent me some pieces indicating he had been interviewed. So if you can kind of share with people where they can go and actually hear him speak for himself, my buddy. I feel like he's my buddy.
Right, I'll tell you,
herself.
related.
Yeah, and then the other thing is to talk about, what you've been doing as in addition to this. You've been doing some other things that quarter kind of cross over in terms of your experience with your grandfather. So if you could speak to that. And then later on, I know I just heard yesterday that Yvette Clarke, who's a congressperson from New York, is seeking to re-engineer the Affordable Housing Area Median Income Fairness Act. And I don't know if she's somebody that you've been in touch with, but her. And also, I just found out yesterday that Maxine Waters, housing, the whole issue of housing falls under her jurisdiction in Congress. So that's, people you may want to contact. So if you could just tell us some, where people can get information about your grandfather so they can hear him yourself. Just as respect, I think we need to hear him. And then the other thing is to talk about how this has impacted all the things you've been doing, since that time, in addition to trying to get this Federal Housing Act amended.
Well, my grandfather's name is Dr. York David Garrett, and several articles have been written about him. One is the U.S. News and World Report. They did a feature article as a centurion. He lived to be 104, but they did a featured article on him in U.S. News and World Report when he turned 100 years old. So that's one. Duke University did an extensive interview with him called Behind the Veil. So if anyone wants to go online, go to Duke University, Behind the Veil, and put in Dr. York David Garrett. And then there's an more probably than you would want to take time to listen to, but it's an extensive interview of his journey as a child growing up in Tarboro, North Carolina, into his elder years. So those are two key areas that you can find. If you go to the Hayti information regarding Durham, North Carolina, and I do have, and I'm sorry, Doc, I didn't put up pictures, but there are pictures of the digression of the urban impact, pictures of the drugstore when it was in its heyday, the order of it. If you go to the movie Raised on YouTube, it tells a story or gives some profile of the story of Durham, North Carolina, and my grandfather. So that's another resource that anyone.
Well, let me add this while you're looking. If you could put it on the chat, if not, maybe somebody could put it in the chat for me. But the other thing, Hayti, and I just wanted to say something you can add to it. A lot of people don't know Hayti was one of the 1,200 Black self-sufficient, pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, got no abatements, no subsidies, no tax write-offs that we know of. And that's only the ones we know of that existed. And some of them were settlements. And in some instances, some people know, because I've seen the chat on when Black women chat, the listserv, that some of them were so small, and maybe not that small, but they all suffered the same fate as Tulsa. And, all of them, it's just like, how dare you pull yourself up by your bootstraps? And as a result, not only were they driven out, but whole communities were actually, where people were murdered, because that's what they were, murdered. And they were also, communities were replaced with lakes. And I know, more people were beginning to know about this, but Hayti is really critical. So if you could speak just a little bit about Hayti, whatever it is you want to say to add to that for people who may not know about that community.
Right. Well, it was thriving. It was absolutely incredible. It was so self-contained. I mean, if you went into that neighborhood, I mean, all African-American, everything you could ever want. It was a hotel, it was a theater. My grandfather's drugstore was prolific. It was the meeting place, the gathering place of, all the major Black leaders, in Durham during that time, the Mechanics and Farmers Bank, the North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company, which was huge. It was also considered one of the Black Wall Street. areas. Just, incredible artists, incredible individuals with just extraordinary gifts, talents, artists, tennis players, doctors. I mean, you name it, it was in Hayti. And, from Atlanta to Richmond, Durham was that in-between spot because there were no place for people to stop and eat and in a Black establishment or go or stay overnight in a hotel. There was the Garrett Biltmore complex with the hotel there, so people can come and stay overnight before they moved on north to Richmond and on to Washington. So it was self-contained. I mean, and today there is not a sign or a marker that this community ever existed. Over 100 years of prolific, sovereign community, and there's not a sign. So this is a travesty. It has to be corrected, and this is our good faith effort to say we've got to bring attention to this issue and continue to lobby not only from the federal side, but certainly at the local side, and getting the momentum and the support that is available through local support so that we can use that as leverage for federal reparation for this issue.
I just want to say, when we think these were ecosystems, a lot of young people don't know there were no, and I think it's important that there were no tax abatements given. There were no subsidies given. There was no tax write-offs. They pulled this, if you want to know what pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is, that's what these communities did. They were totally self-sufficient. And also, when I talk to young people who have this concept of entrepreneurship, but it usually includes what are we going to get from the taxpayers, right? And they don't necessarily know, but what are we going to get from the taxpayers? They don't necessarily have an idea of how self-sufficient we were. And the other part is I use the example that even when you're talking about entrepreneurship and things of that sort, when you're talking about these communities, especially when I'm talking to them, it's just not the self-sufficiency of it. It's the fact that for all intent and purposes, when you think about this country, it's a good example of them not wanting all of us, all Black people, to rise up and be self-sufficient, because we already have models that we could do it. It seems to be that it's okay if you have one person or, a few people individually, like you have the entertainers, the sports people, some billionaires out there, but it's not meant for all of us to do it, just isolated situations where we've already proven that all of us could have the potential to do this as the collective of Black people in this country. So that's the interesting thing. So I appreciate the fact that you provided the information on your grandfather and where people can get additional information. I do want people to learn a little bit more about you and how not only are you seeking to get an amendment to the 1949, but this has impacted, from our conversation, this has impacted your entire life. Everything, probably from the husband you chose to, what schools, where you're going to live. And Yvonne is actually, even though you were down south, you spent a sizable part of your life in Newark, which you only live next door to right now.
Yes. Well, I'm an artist by trade and performing artist. And I segued into community-based development because I was challenged by the Tennessee Arts Commission that art builds communities. And we started with models looking at how we can use art in blighted areas of our community, and specifically in the African-American experience, how we can use art as a way to restore, to sustain, and to build. And so I committed to that process. So I segued from being a performing artist, I still am, but I segued from performing arts into community-based development, using art and culture as a basis in which to rebuild and restore community. And I mentioned to you in our last interview that I had the good fortune of meeting Alex Haley in Tennessee. I was living in East Tennessee at the time. And Alex was a great griot. I mean, he was a great storyteller, and he bought this incredible farm in East Tennessee, and people would come from all over the world to sit at his feet, so to speak, and glean from his love and his care and his nurturing. Oprah Winfrey. I mean, just all major, artists that we know of and personalities that we know of. The thing that struck me deeply with Alex is that he passed suddenly, and when he passed, they sold all of his belongings and his estate off to the highest bidder. He bought a palatial estate in East Tennessee. It was like a plantation type setting. And the disturbing experience that I had in encountering that was an auctioneer was in the center of that palatial estate, auctioning off all of his belongings to the highest bidder. I could not, I was just absolutely shocked that he did not escape the auction block in death, even though he brought to our attention the horrificness of slavery and the devaluing of our worth. And then here we are, 100+ years later, and his estate didn't escape the auction block. We weren't afforded to keep his estate intact so that we could continue to glean from his legacy and the investment that he made. And so again, with the Tennessee Arts Commission giving me the commission to look at how art builds communities, I commissioned an artist by the name of Tina Allen to develop a maquette, which is a 2.5 foot model of a statue that ultimately became a 13-foot seated statue. I'll put it in the chat so if someone want to take a look at it. It's called Haley Heritage Square, where they were members of the community that gave up some of their property, and there was a blighted area in the neighborhood. And we took that blighted area and erected the statue of Alex Haley as a gateway into the African-American community in Knoxville, Tennessee. And so, and now it has become a tourist attraction. People come from far and wide to see the statue and to see the magnificent artwork created by Tina Allen, and looking at the community and the light that it should be seen in, the value of our heritage, our culture, what we mean to our community and what we mean to each other. So if anyone wants to take a look at that exquisite statue of Alex Haley at Heritage Square, is an example of how we can use art and to preserve our heritage and our culture for the welfare of community. So I put Haley Heritage, but it's Haley Heritage Square in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Also, Yvonne, when you finish, because someone had a question and I thought that neither me or you said it, but we implied it. The question was from Nicole Grimsley, and Nicole is much younger than us. So she wasn't here, and Nicole, I'll just tell you, even in Newark, New Jersey, where University of Medicine and Dentistry is now, which is in the old Central Ward, which was where all the Black folks basically came to during the Great Migration, even though they lived in different parts, but we were concentrated in the Central Ward. And that's where University of Medicine and Dentistry, and that hospital, that designation was made by the governor of the state of New Jersey in the 1950s purposely to get rid of the Black middle class, the doctors, all the people that Yvonne talked about in Durham, all those people. This is a self-sufficient community too. It's a self-sufficient ecosystem. And to make sure that they would not vote against him, that's why they designated area. Rutgers owns that or controls the area now, but actually that's right in the center of the city of Newark. Well, they kind of shifted the boundaries, but it's in the old, they called it the old Central Ward. Yeah, and it's in all parts of the city. So Yvonne, if you could speak to why they do it. In that instance, it was purely political, but it's under the powers of the state and the federal government for the health, safety, and welfare, which means they're going to take tax money and do something for the benefit of everyone. But as Yvonne said, and she could speak more to it, it doesn't mean that everybody benefits. And in that instance in Durham, like nobody really benefited. It just moved people, and so what? So go ahead, Yvonne, you can speak to that or add whatever you want to in terms of why urban renewal is necessary, especially when areas, and Nicole said, it sounds like these areas are thriving. Yeah, they were thriving. What does that say? they're thriving, but you feel like you need to move them or get rid of them. So Yvonne, you want to add to that?
Well, it was once the powers that be recognized the value of African-American dollar, and what that could mean for, the general populace as opposed to just the African-American community. So, it was economically motivated, there's no question, to redirect the African-American spending power, for those big box stores that were cultivating, and so, and to this day, we're still buying into that, and we're still being captivated, by that influence as opposed to shopping at home. I'd like to know how many women on this chat today have businesses that we need to look at how we can invest back into each other. We need to redirect our focus into our capability, into our ingenuity and innovation, because we have to support each other. That's the way we will grow. And so, and that's, unfortunately, we were sold a bill of goods that something else was better than what we have. And we have to stop thinking that way. We have to start holding anyone who presents, those proposals to us that we have to give up what we have in order to receive better needs to be questioned, and not be so quick to give up what we have for the sake of, some other plan. We really need to be more responsible in valuing what we have, and holding fast to what we have. That even in our urban centers, to put more emphasis on what that means to us. We have to care more about where we are and where we live, because if we don't value it, then someone can come and say, well, you don't need this, something else is better, you can give this up. But that's under the guise of taking what is most valuable, right, and giving it away. And so we've got to preserve home. We've got to preserve, where our roots are, and be rooted and grounded, because we can't keep getting uprooted, because there's no continuity and capacity building in being uprooted. So we have to value home more. We have to value place more, and we have to build in those places. And so I'd like to know how many women on this line have businesses that need to be supported, or know someone that has a business that needs to be supported, because that's the way that we can start investing more specifically in building capacity and sustaining where we are right now, while we work to get more of our tax dollars where they need to be, in supporting our existence.
People can, just raise their hands using the reaction to see how many people on this call actually have businesses of some sort. And it could be part-time, it can be something on the side that you're doing, but if everybody who's doing something would just kind of raise their hand, that would be, we get an idea. I see one, but it could be my screen. 2, 3. Yeah, there's a couple people here.
Okay, well, great. We'd like to know what type of business is it? That's the other step.
Let's just have everybody who has a business, is one at a time. Let me go back and see if I can, let me cross this out. Okay, anybody want to say anything about their business? Who's on? You may be on mute, but if you want to just say what kind of business that you're doing.
Oh, my name is Miss Vi Sanders. I'm located here in South Carolina, and I have a business where my birth home is North Carolina. And Miss Patterson, I hear you very loud because North Carolina is my birthplace. But I do have a business that I'm very proud of and trying to keep it alive. And it's called Vi Services Incorporation, wherein I have 7 traveling exhibits that share our history through all the avenues where we have achieved and made significant contributions, such as African-American inventors, African-American first, African-Americans in sports, African-Americans in the military, African-American freedom fighters and the Underground Railroad, and African-American tea ceremony. I have 7 exhibits and 7 presentations. And what does the Bible tell us? 7, and I am complete. And if I can share the history with those 7 exhibits and presentation, I'm complete in sharing our many contributions and achievements.
Well, I have to say,
That
I
is
know
really
Vi,
wonderful.
Yvonne, I know Vi, I met her at Weekway Park. I meet people in the darnest places. I met her at
Is that
Weekway Park.
right?
She was actually, she had a cart with replicas of these inventions that were done by Black people. And, you know, Vi, put your stuff in, put your information in, because I buy the invention cards. I'm buying some now just to give them out in the community. But she had coloring books, which I understand her niece is going to be reprinting. And so I have a lot of grandnieces and nephews. And so, you know, I make sure. And as a matter of fact, at Essex County College, we did a program and we actually introduced the students to inventors. And, you know, what people don't know, a lot of the inventions, two things is important with those inventions. One is most of them were created by chattel slaves for the purpose of making their life easier. Unfortunately, because they were property, they could not, and this goes back to the wealth issues. The patent was not owned by them. It was owned by the people who owned them. So individuals got the wealth based on what people created. And the other thing I just found out, 80% of the people who were craftsmen, who were, you know, chattel slaves who came through the kidnapping, were craftsmen. Like they were the ones who, you know, they brought that talent with them from the continent of Africa, 80% of them, right? So they used them for their craftsmanship. And I thought that was interesting. So Vi does the inventions is, you know, you should get them from, if you have any children, but from the bathroom, there's so many things that people around the world are using that has made our life, we don't even know is making our life easier, from coasters, you know, that you can put underneath and move your chairs around, bathrooms, refrigerators. I mean, think about all the food we wouldn't have that would have been spoiled and wasted, but for a refrigerator. So she's done the job. And again, she used to take this cart around when she was living in New Jersey. She did bring it to Essex County College. But I met her in the park. But that's where I meet people, you know, not in regular places. All right. Anybody else want to talk about their business? Anyone else? Or you're on mute?
I'm here. Hello?
Hi, who's speaking?
Hi, my name is Tisha Merritt. I'm the owner of the Bush Doctor Crystal Factory in Flatbush, Brooklyn, which is connected to the Bush Doctor Juice Bar.
Oh, good.
Yes. And I also wanted to announce that I am hiring. I'm looking for young people who have a knowledge of crystals. So they could give me a call. Is it okay if I could give my number or email?
You know what? Do that. Put your number in the chat. And when you say crystal, you just talking about crystal in terms of the glass. What do you can you give us?
Oh, crystal stones, precious stones, crystals, metaphysics, books. And we also do tarot card reading also.
Oh, okay. So put your
the
information
website.
in the chat.
Okay, well,
No,
the
go ahead.
website is
Tell us more.
The website is the Bush Doctor. The crystalfactory.com, and the other one is the bushdoctorjuicebar.net, and that is located on Tompkins Avenue in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. I was in the community in Bed-Stuy for about 14 years, and I was at a time when gentrification had just started, and there weren't a lot of options for health. So my specialty was juices, smoothies, and of course my famous ginger beer. So I was at a time when health was needed in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Bedford-Stuyvesant has changed a lot in 14 years. Now you have juice bars all over the place. The Crystal Factory is in downtown Brooklyn. Actually, I don't think there are any crystal factories that I know of in downtown Brooklyn. We offer different types of precious stones. We offer books about crystals. We talk about, need some help here. I'm here talking with my partner. So we do so many different things here with crystals and books and tarot cards and candles, stuff like that. Nice gifts. So I would love for people to come down. And if you know anyone who's interested, we are hiring also.
Crystal, there's a young lady in that area. She did a book preparing people for college. I'll try to get that while you guys are talking so I can just give you the information. She was like 21 years old and she wrote this book, and I just met her by listening to the radio. So I'll try to put that in.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and also we had Claudette. Claudette she's in real estate, so she'll tell us a little bit about that. I'm gonna step away and get that book for a minute in the meanwhile. But also Claudette brings the
Okay.
point because Black farmers, they were businesses there. I mean, talking about what Yvonne has been talking about, Black farmers were businessmen that were feeding us. And I know when I grew up here in Newark, those same Black farmers would come up and bring fresh fruits and vegetables from down south, from North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, and sell them on Urban Turner Boulevard. And that's where we got fresh stuff from them bringing it up in our community in Newark. So they also became part of our community in the Central Ward of Newark, bringing up stuff that we could eat that didn't cost a lot of money, and people had fresh food. There wasn't nobody eating McDonald's. I don't think McDonald's, they weren't doing hamburgers. I think McDonald's started with in North Carolina, as a matter of fact. McDonald's store in North Carolina, and it wasn't what they bought from. It was two Black men, and they bought the equipment for the soda fountain. It wasn't the hamburgers, but nobody was eating that kind of food. So yeah, Claudette, can you speak to? Go ahead, who's that?
It's funny, this is Tisha again. My juices, when I was selling my juices, I started off selling them for $2.50 when I opened up my business.
Wow. Okay.
Because it wasn't for me, it wasn't about the money. It was about bringing health to the neighborhood.
Right. And you took real fruits and vegetables people could have. Yeah, because our diets have changed. And when I think about it, going back to that woman I mentioned earlier who was 125 years old without a cane, right? So you knew she had nutrients in her food, and the water was cleaner and the air was cleaner. And think about the trauma that she had, and she was able to live that long and stand up after all the horror and things she may have been subjected to. And this was in 1916. So she had lived at 125. She had lived through the 1800s. The picture I have is 1916. And she's standing up with a bunch of other people who are a couple of years younger than her, and they have canes. So let's see.
Much knowledge you have.
Claudette Johnson-Berry, can you speak to what you're doing and talk about the Black farmers while I go find out the name of this book?
Sure.
Yes, excuse me. Can you tell me the lady's name that was 125 without a cane? Do you have her name by any chance?
I'm going to, the picture that I have one of my former students. I thought I saw if he could pull it up. Oh yeah, I think I could send it to him because I have it on my phone. I could send it to him and he could put it in, but their names are not there. They don't know who the photographers are, if I remember correctly. But let's see what we can do. And meanwhile, I'm going to go to Claudette.
Sure. Good evening, ladies. I'm a real estate agent in the state of Maryland, currently licensed. I've been a mortgage broker and also have worked with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and HUD in restructuring the mortgage industry. One of the challenges that we're facing as you talk about land ownership and land development is that there is a move afoot to try to make us as in citizens of this country, renters as opposed to homeowners.
Yes.
So if you do have property in the family or if you own it, you really need to put a plan in place for managing that property and to be able to maintain it in your family or just for yourself, because the intent is to ultimately change us all from being owners to subscribers or renters. And it's happening across the country in different pockets, and in particular in communities where housing was or may still be somewhat affordable. Trillions of dollars are going into different investment companies like Blackstone and others to make this happen. So
Claudette, can you tell people, and I think that was important, people don't necessarily know Blackstone control most of the money around COVID, and they control sizable parts of trillions of dollars of tax money. So can you speak to them a little bit to just educate people about Blackstone?
Blackstone is one of the high trillion-dollar entities that exist in the US in terms of an investment banking enterprise. And what they have been doing is going up. Part of what we saw in the real estate market over the past few years is not just individuals competing against each other to purchase property. It was investors who were going in and buying up blocks of community, average single family homes, They were putting
Yes.
them in portfolios so that at
Mhm.
some point in time, especially if there is a workforce in that community, they end up becoming workforce housing. But you'll have
Mhm.
to rent it. Places like Florida, Southern Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, areas like that, the housing cost is above and beyond the reach of the average everyday family. So a lot of foreign money coming in from the oligarchs, coming in from maybe even the cartels and other entities have infiltrated the Floridian market. But it's not just Florida, it's Atlanta, it's North Carolina, it's Maryland, it's everywhere that you can possibly think of where there are income households, where there is work opportunities available, that these homes have been bought up. So there is a process in place. They're claiming that Blackstone lost $1 trillion this past year in 2022 when the market pivoted. Now, if they lost $1 trillion, God only knows how much they made in that process.
We're
But
not
as
even talking about that bank that collapsed, the
that's
16th
a
largest bank that
whole,
collapsed. And we're
that's
not
a
also talking about what is this new digital money, right?
that's a
FTX.
right. The fintech is, it's a whole different conversation that maybe we can have as another topic, Helen, because there is much more happening behind the curtain, if you would, than we are probably even cognizant of. When I started as a consultant on the project with HUD, just as Obama got in office, to understand what disrupted the housing market, what disrupted the mortgage and the financial services, what happened. And people, if you've ever seen the movie Too Big to Fail, if you haven't seen it, you may want to go and watch it,
Yep.
because it's orchestrated for you in living color exactly what was going on. The whole dominoes came tumbling down because of Countrywide and because of the president of Countrywide thinking that, hey, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and HUD have special opportunities where they can go in and create all kinds of mortgage products. So me as a private entity, why can't I go and do the same thing that they did? But he didn't have the safeguards in place. And when he failed, he took down the whole financial service, mortgage industry, everything went downhill with it. And he walked away with a minimum fine. But preservation of land ownership, preservation of your home is a critical process that we really have to work on understanding what is involved with that and keeping our communities, or at least a roof over our heads, at a minimum. Because it's not just North Carolina or Atlanta or Miami or Washington, D.C. that's becoming
The whole country.
unaffordable. It's the whole country.
Also, and it's also, Claudette, it's hitting white people too. And, you know,
Yes.
and that's important to know, because whenever the economy is bad, you know, people, and that's been Trump's advantage, the economy. And so when people are scrambling for what the little bit, because that's what they do, keep us all scrambling for the little bit, then you get the confusion and division and all these other things that don't make the situation it makes it worse. So yeah, and in Newark, we're 70% renters. The city of Newark, but this also goes back to company towns. Some of you may remember that there used to be company towns. That's about quite similar to what we have. Let's see who else we have.
So I have a question on the real estate issue, if I may, Doug. And that is, again, with this, the Housing Act is to create opportunity for those who are renting in public housing, for that to become their own private property. That there's an initiative in place to make sure that those that are in public housing have a stake in that environment, where they can actually rent to own those spaces, so that they have their own place. And the government is able to do that. They should be empowering them to become property owners and using that real estate and that stock to do that, because it's going to be maintained as public housing anyway. So why not give, you know, the renters the opportunity to actually own? And I think that should be included, you know, in the Promise Act, so that people have a stake in their environment, and then more vested in their environment. So that's something that is possible.
But
that HUD can offer that as an option for those who are renting in public housing.
Well, you know what, Yvonne, what's interesting, and I'm going to go back to Franklin Roosevelt. I'm really into the post Great Depression. And my mom was born in 1929, so I remember all of that stuff. So the reason why I said it, because he used to say to the head of the sleeping car porters and Miss Perkins, who was the head of who was Miss Frances Perkins, who came out of New York, and they put her, she was the first woman in a position, in a cabinet position in federal government. And what Roosevelt used to say to both of them when they were talking about the conditions and what they wanted to do to individuals, he said, make me do it. You're going to have to make me do it. And, you know, the head of sleeping car porter, whose name escapes me right now, I'm sure somebody's going to bring it up. What he was going to do is have the first march on Washington. And that moved Franklin Roosevelt, because the last thing he wanted in 1930s is a bunch of Black people on the square in Washington, D.C. in the 1930s. So, you know, as he said, realizing all the pressures that elected officials and now all the money behind them, because we're talking about the real estate industry. And I don't know, a lot of people know, but real estate industry is also had a hand in, like a cell, I guess you could say, had a hand in running people out of communities, using the gangs to make elder people get not confused, but uncomfortable living and walking away from their homes, because they weren't safe, and they would just be able to, I mean, they would lose so much money on the sale because they were fearful. So the real estate industry plays some role in terms of the gangs scaring people out of their homes. And, you know, we need to know that. So I'm gonna let you finish. I just wanted to point out also, Garfield Simpson put in the chat the picture. I know somebody asked me the picture of the women, picture from left. Oh, their names are there. Annie Parham, age 104, Annie Ankelis, I think, age 105, Elizabeth Berkeley, who is 125 years old, and Sadie Thompson, 110 years old. You can see their picture that he put in the chat.
Thank you. Will I be able to see it on the YouTube on the replay?
Oh yeah, the picture that's in the chat, you should be able to do that. You should be able to. Yeah, I think the chat's come up.
I'm on calling right now.
Oh, okay. All right. And there's somebody else. Oh, I did want Claudette to talk a little bit about the Black farmers too. She talked about the property. Can you speak to the Black farmers a little bit, Claudette? Is she there?
Sorry, I don't know much about it, but there is a couple organizations that are forming to help the farmers to get awareness as to what's going on with the threats on their land and the encroachment that is happening. There's a situation in Colorado right now where there's a Black farmer that's under siege, and they're starting to get a little bit of information out in the public domain. But every time he turns around, his property is being taken, his animals are being killed, and the police are constantly locking him up. So
you say that because during the Bill Clinton administration, he actually, I can't think of the gentleman who was in his administration who was helping the Black farmers. Like, they have an organization. He was helping the Black farmers, and he's basically doing it by himself. And what happened, they set him up. He actually got, this is in the Clinton administration. He actually,
Secretary of Agriculture.
Exactly. Secretary of Agriculture. He's got papers all over his floor in his office trying to help the Black farmers. And then somebody offers him a ticket to go to, I don't know, some kind of game or whatever. And they use that basically saying that he didn't get the ticket the right way. It wasn't even a lot of money, and they got rid of him. But this was during the Clinton administration. So, you know, they've been doing the job in the Black farmers, and that's critical to the food supply, because if they were in the position they were, we should not be going through the changes that we go through to have good food. You know, and that's really interesting. I did see somebody else with a beauty parlor, a beautician. I don't know the words. I don't like get my hair done. That's my issue. Let's see now.
That's me, Cassandra Daniels.
Hi, Cassandra. How are you?
Hi, I'm excited to be here. My friend Mayor Wilder invited me, and this is really nice and encouraging. My daughter, April Nelson, opened her beauty shop now probably about a year ago in Columbus, Ohio, in Democratic demographically urban Black area in Columbus, where there was no shop. And so she's trying to, get it going. She's been doing pretty well. Everything inside, like it was something else. And so the family did all the work in it ourselves, to help out, encourage. And she would be on here, except she's with my grandson right now. But it's exciting. And I think for the opportunity to put her name in the chat.
Great.
I think there's also Michelle Burgess. But just to go back, Judy made a note, and people need to be aware of this. FDIC, which all of these agencies that are supposed to help people are the results of the Great Depression to keep us from being out in the street. And what people may not know is all of these like TIA Craft, all of those investment portfolios are not insured by the FDIC. American Express, even I have TIA Craft, they're not insured by the FDIC. The banks are, and maybe somebody knows better than me, but I know at one point they were insure your funds up to $250,000. So if you have more than $250,000, you want to put it in several banks, but be careful what banks you put. I mean, it's got to do a whole study around banks. I'm going to call my TIA Craft because I know they're not insured, and I want to know what they're doing, especially in light of with this bank collapse in the 16th largest bank. Now, keep in mind, the city of Newark is the 16th largest city. So we're talking about major attacks on our economy. And I think somebody mentioned earlier, if this happens, here we go again, 2008. And I have to say, we're past the time, because usually in this kind of financial system, usually from 10 to 15, we're 15 years past we're really about 5 years past having a downfall. So that's interesting. And what the feds are doing, for what I hear, that's not necessarily a good move, but we don't, we'll see, but we need to try to be prepared. And holding on to the real estate is critical. Go ahead, Yvonne.
No, I wanted to ask, we need also the banks that get the credits for community investment, there needs to be accountability and transparency on that. And that each community, where these banks are located, that get that federal investment credit, we need to know how those dollars are being utilized. How are they being reinvested back in the community? And so, we need to be watchdogs on, these public considerations, public appropriations that are given locally, and how they are actually spent. Because we have, I don't see the evidence of it. The blight is still there, the joblessness is still there, not having the business incubators, workforce development in strategic areas of communities that need it the most. So how are these reinvestment dollars being utilized by the banking community? And so that's something, Professor, that we need some accountability on. How are those dollars being utilized to invest back in community?
You're
And
not
I think
seeing it because
Go
it's
ahead, go
not
ahead.
getting done. You're not seeing it because it's not getting done. Most
Right.
of them are meeting less than 1%. So DOJ does have some actions out on a number of these banks, and it's not just the small community-oriented or regional banks, it's the national ones as well.
Right.
The other point goes to our education about these systems, because people don't know the jargon, they don't know the language. I mean, it needs to happen, but if people don't even know about BlackRock, they don't even know about these things that we're talking about, most of it is just educating people about it so they at least know about it, and then ask questions, and then act, and then demand. But fundamentally, there's a lot of things we don't know. That's the issue. Michelle Burgess, PhD, integrative nutrition health coach. You want to speak? Oh, health coach. And she also coaching in children's books. Michelle, are you still there? Dr. Burgess? She may not still be on. Are you there?
I didn't see her. I don't think I think she might have dropped off.
Oh, okay, but she has nutrition
information. And people
okay.
also ask that Claudette enter her information.
Yeah, Claudette, put your information in. Somebody also,
Well,
Meryl Wilder, I know I saw you. You talked about a Black Adelphi Bank in Columbus, Ohio's newly opened Black bank.
Yes, ma'am. They just opened maybe 2 weekends ago, and they are here to work specifically with Black people where other banks wouldn't approve people for certain loans. They'll work with Black people to understand the process and to get them approved.
Mhm.
And to work with them all along the way, hand in hand. I did have a question. You all mentioned, I was on another Zoom a couple of weeks ago. It was Urban, there was a website you mentioned, Urban Financial Literacy or Urban, do you recall the name of it? I'm trying to get back to it and
Was this
share
last
with
week?
family friends. It may have been last week or the week prior.
Week prior was on, so it must have been last week, and it may be on Helen. You know, these pieces go to her YouTube channel, so
Okay.
it's probably on there. But I that was one of the 2 times that I didn't make it.
Yes, ma'am, I'll check.
Please forgive me. One of the 2 times in almost 4 years. Thank you. Let's see. I just sent something. Thanks a lot for the and I think that will be helpful at some point, you know, who's going to do this, but to put together a list of banks. Also, Carver Bank still exists in New York. Judy, you're on. You keep sending us information, so I'm gonna get you. Judy, can you talk? What is NCUA? Because you talk about credit unions have insurance via NCUA. So if you put your money in a credit union, for the most part, they are insured, but I'm not sure what NCUA. Judy?
Yeah, so basically it's similar to FDIC insurance. It's just that's for credit unions.
It's federal.
Yes, it covers precisely the same thing, but it's just for credit unions.
Okay. Judy's she's on a roll. If you see the chat, she's like really putting a lot of information. Thank you, Judy, for being so helpful. I think we have another message. Urban financial literacy. Charlotte Attenborough put it in, Meryl. urbanfinancialliteracy.com. Thanks, Charlotte.
Welcome.
Also, the book that I was talking about that Garfield will probably put on, if he hasn't already, is the next chapter, Life After High School, a guide for students and parents preparing for life after high school. It's a collaboration between a very young lady, very young. I don't think she was 22 years old. Her name is Amira Johnson. That's the book right there.
Nice.
Yeah, and actually, this is a book that all high school students in 10th grade should get as they prepare. I'm actually going to try to get some and send them. There's a young man in one of the public housing projects here who's trying to work with people there. And I'm just going to buy some in order to give them to people to inspire them to move on from high school to the next step. So that's just an aside. Anybody else have a business that they didn't put on the chat that they want to talk about?
Just like to know how much is the book and how can you, let me see, I'm just trying to see how do you get it?
Garfield, can you put that on for me? I get easily distracted like a little kid. I think I paid maybe $10 for the book. I'm just looking at it really quickly. Let's see. It talks about, oh, wow. You hold the keys to your future. You're the author of your story and can edit how your story will end at any time. It's important to choose a career field that you're passionate about. Where should the next chapter of your life take place? Choosing the right college will help you decide. And it's time to make a decision, you know, because college is not for everybody. College, some people have skills and, you know, unfortunately, I know I'm old enough to remember where you didn't have to go to college. You can, you know, I knew people who were seamstress, people who used their skills. They didn't have to go to Walmart, which is shutting down a lot of stores, by the way. They didn't have to go. I knew people who made wedding dresses, they made curtains, they made quilts. A lot of things were, you know, they taught you how to sew, how to cook, so you can start your own restaurant. Guys were taught how to fix cars. And it was interesting because he was older than me, but he went to one of the high schools and he learned how to fix cars. He fixed cars on his own to the day he died. He never worked for anybody else fixing cars because he learned in high school how to do it. But now, just as FYI, just to let you know that that equipment they use for home economics and for shop, because those were the titles when I was there. Everybody's still paying for it. All this stuff is housed in warehouses across the country, and your tax money is paying for it, all this equipment to be housed. And I remember that when I found this out, I asked the superintendent of schools in Newark, and I said, why don't you take this out and use it for the children. He said it's liability issues. I'm like, well, it's liability issues when they don't have anything to do and they start shooting at each other. So seems to me that it's worthwhile to try to, do that. But, to get them in the trades and things like plumbers, electricians, these people make a lot of money. They make good money and they don't have to take work home. Like people who are lawyers.
They encourage it in internship in the corporate sector. Right. The exact same thing, just looking at it from a trade standpoint. So we're still trying to get information about the book and where you purchase it and how much.
Okay. I need Garfield to put that in for me. Let me see if I have it so I can move it. In the meanwhile, Judy's going to tell you she's a retired financial literacy educator and tax advisor, but I can't see her note, cannot afford to retire in this area because the cost of living. That's the other part.
No, that's not the reason. The reason why is because obviously our people need the information.
Oh, okay. Right. You can't afford to retire because it's such a desperate need.
Yes.
I understand. Anybody else have a business they want to talk about?
My name is Samantha Wall-Layler, and
Hi.
yeah, how are you? I'm the daughter of Dolores Ashley, and my aunt is Viola. I do have a business. It's called Unlimited Fashions, and we specialize in plus size fashions, also regular size fashions, and we offer ladies clothing, accessories, fashions, African clothing. We have the bling sneakers. We also offer the Black Inventors book. And on May 6th, 2023, we're going to have the Women in Business Expo. And we're going to feature women in the community, also women in business. We're going to have a tribute to Aretha Franklin, Motown Entertainment, gospel music. And it's going to be May 6th in Sacramento, California. And also, we are also offering a plan where we're going to have, excuse me, people that want to invest in Black-owned business. We're looking for investors in my fashion business. And also we have a plan where you can invest your money and you can get 5% guaranteed back on your money. So if you want more information about Unlimited Fashions or about the women in business or how to invest your money and get a guaranteed 5%, you can call me 916-410-1664, 916-410-1664. So please call me. And if you missed the number, you can also call Ms. Higgy and she can contact Samantha Wall-Layler. Again, I'm Viola's niece and Dolores Ashley is my mom. Thank you.
You're the
Please
one
repeat
to be
your number
buying.
again.
Yeah, can you
Please
put in the
repeat the
chat?
number one more time.
My phone number is, excuse me, 916-410-1664. And again, I represent Unlimited Fashions, the Women in Business Expo on May 6th in Sacramento, California. And we have an investment plan where you can get a guaranteed 5% on your money. Also, if you want to invest in a woman-owned business, we're looking for investors so that we can grow Black women-owned businesses. Each other.
Let's see. The book, the cover of the book, Yvonne, is in the chat.
I see it.
Yeah. I can give you the number later. I just can't get it now. I was hoping that Garfield could extract it from me, but yeah. And
so
we give it to Helen.
Wonderful. So, yeah, I'd like to, could be that Newark Public Schools can purchase it, and lobby exactly. As superintendent to purchase these books for high school students. Excited about Unlimited Fashions. So do you have a website?
Yes, the website is theunlimitedfashions.com. It's Unlimited Fashions with an S. Again, theunlimitedfashions.com. And we also do real estate investing where we buy homes and we flip them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if anybody is interested in real estate, I'm part of a real estate investment group.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great.
We bought a couple homes and we were able to flip them within 3 months and triple our money. There's certain areas in the country where you can buy homes or you can buy land anywhere from 6 to 12,000, hold it for a couple months and just flip it. But we have some other areas.
Samantha,
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about flipping, but I know there's a lot of people not happy with flipping, particularly in poor neighborhoods, you know, going back to what we talked about. Can you speak to that? And also, you're the one who is doing the new edition of Vi's book. And
Yes.
I just ordered, right? So can you speak to that? Because a lot of people are uncomfortable with flipping, particularly if it's in, you know, under-resourced communities that lead to that. I know that's one of the problems we're having in Newark. There's what is a trust, right? People are losing their property and it's going in a trust. And then you have these outside people who are buying up, you know, it could be hedge funds or whatever. So can you speak a little bit about that? Because there is some concern about flipping property, particularly in oppressed, under-resourced neighborhoods.
You know what? I find that with flipping property, one, you need to do your research. You can go to different areas. It could be Georgia, it could be South Carolina, it could be North Carolina, it could be Texas, Tennessee. I would say if you know people in the area, talk to them about the area. Say for example, you see something that's like $7,000. It's in an old neighborhood, but you see the potential for growth. So one, find a property. Two, talk to people in the neighborhood. Three, go to the city, whatever city you want to invest in, go to like your city office and get a 5-year plan and see what's going to happen within 5 years with that property. If the property is near a major highway or major street, chances are there's going to be gentrification, unfortunately. But if we're going to win with gentrification, it's good if we're going to buy it and build and make money. But with gentrification, we're just going to lose our home and other cultures come in and buy. So I would say just check out the 5-year plan for that area. And also talk to other realtors. You can talk to either like churches that are nearby. Most time churches, they know exactly what's happening in the community because we found like older homes. It was actually a home it was just all torn. We bought it and we was able to flip it. But I did a little bit of research before I bought it. And there's a lot of areas that they look like they're going down, but actually you have people that are going to come in and rebuild that area. So definitely do your research before you buy it. Just don't like, oh, it's only 10,000. I can flip it. Do your research.
Somebody needs to be muted.
Everyone I know is broke. You just gotta kill.
Right, we're being interrupted, maybe, or somebody. Okay.
Yes, also just talk to realtors. I know there's some companies they would actually give you the money to actually buy a distressed property, and they will give you the money to actually remodel the property. But they're going to ask for certain information about the property and they will give you the money. But with the money they give you, you will have to pay it back within like 6 months to a year. And they specialize in flipping properties. So a lot of people, they buy the property, fix it up, and then they'll sell it. They're turning it into like a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom. Because right now, housing is the #1 problem in the United States. So I believe if Black women, if we can control any type of property, big house, little house, a rental house, and what's also is important, family members that have property, family and friends, before they sell it outside of their family or outside the Black community, if you have somebody in your family that could qualify to buy it, or if you can work with them, try to sell it, your children or nieces, particularly if you have family members that are very innovative, they're very smart, if they buy your property, they're going to take care of it. They're going to, if they sell it, they're going to do the right thing with the money.
That's
so
the way
before
to keep it
we
in the
sell,
family. Yeah.
Keep it in the family. We need to keep it on our community because there are a lot of businesses that we can go into. But one thing about real estate is almost like 85% guaranteed you're going to make money if you make the right decision and find the right property. And we have to remember there are people all around the world that want to come into this country. So there's plenty of opportunities to remodel it, sell it, rent it out, make it an Airbnb. So
we just need to, the education part of it. And that's really hard in our community because, we're in a school system that, and for me, it's interesting. If I'm have you jump in, but for me, I grew up with people, most of the people in the community, I grew up in public housing, in a particular public housing that was one of the last ones built. And this one was particularly built for Black people. Most of the public housing was built for people coming back from World War II in Korea because of a shortage of housing. And it was interesting because people coming up from like Durham, from the South, who didn't have a lot of formal education, but some of the, how to manage the real estate, a lot of them knew this just from having the experiences. I think about what they knew about without having formal education, just the common sense that was helpful. So when you did what was done to Yvonne's grandfather, it was done to a lot of people. And then you had a lot of people who migrated and they left the property because they were fleeing, like really fleeing police, or, we knew them as they were, I don't know if most of you know, but just as an aside, the police actually came out of the Second Amendment, and the police really were the militia. And the role of the militia was to protect the oligarchs from indigenous people and from slave rebellions. They converted into what we know, or evolved, I should say, into slave catchers. And today they're police. And they still pretty much do the same thing, protect the property of wealthier people. That's their job, right? They make it think it's a safety issue, but it's really about protecting other people. And if they have to trick us into thinking or create conflict and craziness so that we kind of ask for police to come into our neighborhoods, that's what happens. But anyway, Yvonne, I went off. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. We were able to build wealth, post-slavery because we supported each other. So number one, we've got to go back. So that's why I thank the viewers today that are online for us to get to know who you are and to come into agreement with who you are and what you do, because it starts with us supporting each other. We've got to get back to that, where we're interdependent on each other and building, back through supporting each other. So it was important for me to hear, what you all do so that we can come into agreement with you. And agreement goes a long way. Just coming into agreement has synergy and power, right? And so, so that was important for me today. We do have to invest back. Yes, we want our tax dollar spent properly. We want government to be accountable, but first we have to be accountable to each other and to honor each other and to support each other. We've got to encourage each other for innovation, for ingenuity, and it's okay to dream again, to focus on what is important to us individually, because we need that ingenuity that comes through our dreams and our aspirations to actually breathe again, right, into what is important to us. Our creativity is extremely important. Creativity pays the bills. Vision pays bills, right? And so we have to give each other permission to have vision, to have dreams, to be innovative, because it does create synergy and creates new opportunity. And so I applaud all of you for the businesses that you're committed to and how we can continue to come into agreement and bring attention to what it is that you all do, and using this network as responsibly as we can to support what you do. So thank you for sharing. My ears are still open to hear. Sis Unlimited Fashions, you want to give a fashion show online? I've never seen an online fashion show, but that would be, you start a new trend. Maybe they have, I just haven't seen one.
Yeah, I've done several on Zoom.
Is that right?
Ms. Hickey, maybe I can schedule one and I'll talk to her about the date and the time. Yes. And
Yeah,
also mention
be a
that
program. That sounds good.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. I'll definitely talk to her about it. And I would want to mention there's also a new strip center in Washington, D.C. It's about maybe 10 or 15 stores, but it's a strip center in DC and they have all Black women-owned businesses. They took over the whole, I'm not going to call it a mall, but it's a mini mall. They took over that whole area.
Right, it's
love
the
to get-
spice. It's
Can
the
you
spice.
share
It's the
specifically
spice
about that?
shop.
I will
It's
have
the
to,
spice. It's
I'll
the
bring it.
spice shop. I'll put the link in the chat.
Yeah, put the link in
Someone
the
has
chat.
it, great.
Yes.
Because one of the things
Yeah,
that
there's a
we've been
lot.
concerned about here in the area is we just had the Greater Newark Women's Assembly, and we had several women who were featured, as vendors at that gathering, and just got a call, several days after the gathering that one of the vendors who has a exquisite couture shop in Maplewood has to close down. And so we've been talking about how to look at creating, some type of retail mart where women can come in and we can share the responsibility of the overhead, where not just one entity is responsible for the overhead. If we build that collective, cooperative type initiative that we can share the overhead responsibilities and give women an opportunity to continue to grow their businesses. Because a lot of these businesses, they're wonderful, great concepts, but it's about sustainability, especially that first couple of years, which is critical for growth. So I'm interested. So someone putting that on the chat on the location in Washington.
Yeah, somebody, I was gonna say that
Yes,
somebody. put
yes,
that
I
in.
will. I'll put it up.
That's a good model. So it's already some models around we don't necessarily know about. So that's great.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to mention in Sacramento, we have an African marketplace. It's called First Saturdays, and we also have Third Saturdays. And it started 7 years ago and is very, very successful. And it's an African marketplace. And the owner promoted this event. He found an office building and he came in and created a space where businesses, vendors, exhibitors, people with product and services, they can offer their product the first Saturday of every month and then and also the third Saturdays. So that model that he has, it is very successful. Him and his wife started it. It's very successful. They get traffic. Every first Saturday, there's a ton of traffic. Third Saturday, there's a lot of traffic. So if they want to create that in New Jersey, I can collaborate with some people and we can duplicate the model that we have here in Sacramento. And again, it's very successful.
Yeah,
Wonderful,
it would be good.
Samantha.
And we all of us have so much to do, but sometimes people just need to step out and say, you know what? And the NAACP used to have a pamphlet. I have an old one where all the Black businesses around the country were in this pamphlet. I have it somewhere, but that's what we need. We need, some young person with energy and time, Samantha, who, or, interns, to get interns or whatever, to put together these publications, I guess hard copy, but also online. But I sort of like hard copy because I always think about how the Egyptians, the papyrus lasted 7,500 years, right? And so the technology changes. And while I think we need to have it on the technology, we always need to have that backup in case something happens. And so if, somebody could step out, or if somebody who might be interested, and they could charge $5 for the publication, just to be able to get some money for their time and interest. Because a lot of people are going to be interested. There are people who look, and sometimes it's work to go look and see where Black businesses are, and that should not be work. That should not be work. One of the comments I wanted to make, Yvonne, going back to what we need to do, and I was thinking about, I had a conversation with somebody maybe a couple of weeks ago. After we were doing the kidnapping process, going through the transatlantic slave trade and everything, even though we had different languages, we had the same mindset of resisting the circumstances. And we did that in terms of the quilts, the hair. We manifested that in so many ways, our idea of resistance and a lot of the creativity, like to make things easier for us. We talked about inventions. but we had a resistance mindset. We had more of a collective. We had a we mindset. And so for me, the benchmark it's really kind of hurt us. Affirmative action, which was more profitable for white women, even though many of us got a chance to take, get the advantage from it. But, at the baseline is we have to think collective. We cannot, we don't have the luxury of a me mentality. Going back to what I said before, the me mentality will get you the opportunities. Yeah, the green book. Thank you, Jocelyn.
Yes.
The me mentality will work for you to be part of the, the class that the masses will ascribe, I want to be there. But I think that, at the foundation, we have to think collective. And I know that trust in our community has been an issue for the last 50 years. That was a casualty of the 2.5 decades of drugs, of heroin and crack cocaine and all of that stuff, which may not have impacted you individually, but it impacted us as a collective, where the level of trust, I had a friend of mine who's Italian. He said, I never understood why Black people trust everybody else, but we have to prove it to each other. Like, we have to prove to each other that we're trustworthy, but we don't ask the same thing. We don't demand the same thing for people who are not part of us. So I think that one is fundamentally we, and I still think that's why I share stuff all the time. I'm like, why should I keep it? When Yvonne said she wanted to talk about this, like, I had no hesitation, because I think everybody's supposed to know. I'm going to share Yvonne with everybody. I'm going to share her story, or let her share her story with everybody. But we have to think in terms of, are we happy about our condition for all of us? We may be happy about our individual, but are we happy about all of us? Because all of us are not there. And we know, going back to Tulsa and Durham and all these other places, we know that the only way they could have accomplished this was to trust each other, to have a resistance mentality, not settling for what they had, and a collective we and not me. Anybody?
I agree. I agree, and I also agree that we as women, and this when Black women chat, when Black women do together, it's a whole new dynamic. And so I'm really so appreciative for this gathering, and how we can come together and see how we can pool our resources to invest in each other for the sake of the greater good. And I believe that we have the power to do that, and to demonstrate what is actually possible. I really believe that we are the saving grace of our nation, but we have to recognize the power that we do have and invest that power strategically, right? And I think it begins with what we're talking about right now. This information that's being shared right now is extremely important. And as we share information and invest, in the information that's been shared, and see how we can fit for our individual communities, or how we can support our communities, and using, this medium of communication to do so. I'm still looking for the information in Washington. Did anyone have information?
It's there. It's Black women-owned strip mall. It's in the chat. Meryl put it in. The strip mall in DC.
Okay, I got it. I see it.
Got it. Okay.
I think that link above from Camille Branch. No, wait a minute. That's
right. That was from Meryl Wilder.
It was from Meryl. Yes, she also put a link.
Black women-owned strip mall. Has anyone visited here? Who's been there? Can someone give more description of how it evolved?
Don't know. It was in the news recently. I think I saw it like a few months back, but I think Richland Burnett, Ryan, I'm not sure if this is the same Calypso Fine Art Gallery. That may not be the same.
I haven't been there, but it started out as a side hustle with the owner wanting specific spices. And as she grew the business and grew a following, she started using her facility for pop-ups to allow other business and entrepreneurs to come in and highlight their project. And she started looking for space and was able to get on board with some funding through DC government to find a larger space. And she got financing through DC government and was able to turn a strip mall that had been pretty much underutilized and pretty much shut down, a bit presence of a former big box hardware store. And so she's subleasing spaces to other entrepreneurs in that facility.
You know, I
Wonderful.
just thought of something that people, I was listening to, it was a book by this gentleman, Chic. Everybody remember the group? Not those of you who are younger may not, but Chic. Do you remember that? If you went to clubs, Chic was like a very classy group in the 1980s. Well, when you talk about, right, if you talk about businesses, what people don't know, there was a decline in the economy of New York City. And they were critical in reviving New York City around Black events, you know, the parties and things they used to have. Those led to the foundation of building up New York City to where it is today. And I was like, wow, you know, it was in real decline. The city had been almost bankrupt. And then all these clubs that started, these Black clubs, and people coming to the clubs, and then the restaurants that came up were sort of like the foundation of reviving the city of New York. I think, you know, those stories, thank you, Garfield, those stories about, you know, what we've done for this country, a lot of people don't know. The language, Yvonne, that you were talking about, the things we need to know so we can watch and make our demands from the language, you know, across the board. So,
Absolutely.
Yvonne, anybody else have a business they want to talk about? Nicole has a note for you. She said, Yvonne, do you have any performance exhibitions coming up that we can support? That was from Nicole.
Well, I was interested, I was interested in the inventors exhibit. I think that more can, you know, be developed through marketing that initiative. I think that's an important piece. It should be in all of our schools, you know, maybe duplicated in a way where it's on permanent exhibit, you know, in areas throughout our nation, actually, you know, and looking at some underwriting for, you know, for each urban center, actually, to make sure that that is on permanent display and exhibit, you know, someplace prominent in every urban center. Professor, you can attest to this. I mean, we don't have enough exhibit of African-American contribution in a predominantly African-American populated city of Newark. I mean, where do you go just to gaze at the contributions of African-Americans? Where do you go in the urban center of Newark, right?
Now, I was thinking about Mary Baraka and how Mary Baraka, I know it's not politically right for the mayor to push that, but Mary Baraka is well known throughout the entire planet. And his books are not part of the curriculum in the Newark Public Schools.
Yeah,
how can you be well known around the planet and in the place that you grew up and were born in the school system that is not there?
Because a prophet is without honor in his own hometown, you know, that's just how that goes.
I wanted to mention,
Samantha,
I'm
speaking.
Oh,
Okay, go ahead,
I'm
Samantha.
from Newark, New Jersey. If we want to work on getting the Black Inventors book and the Inventors display in the schools, Newark is my hometown. That's where I grew up and I worked a lot in Newark, New Jersey. Also, this is Samantha. I'm the one. Talk about the real estate and the women's expo.
Okay, I got you.
I'm taking over the Black Inventors book. So you can call me if you would like to have the book in the schools or have the exhibit in the schools in Newark, because again, Newark is my home. You can call me and we can work on a plan and a strategy to get the books in the schools. It's just a matter of talking to the right person and then talking to whoever is the buyer of books and curriculums and just getting pretty much a 1, 2, 3 process. It's just a matter of talking to the right person. Because I do think that book should be in schools in Newark, and that's my whole hometown. So I do have to educate all young children.
I can get your number from your aunt and I'll call you because I live here. I'm here. And I was going to mention at a city council meeting on Wednesday. I'm actually going in and I'm going to say to the city council, I know that's not their jurisdiction, but I'm definitely going to tell them they should write a letter to the superintendent of schools saying that it's not appropriate for the mayor to do it for obvious reasons, but there's no reason why that person, Mary Baraka, should not, his writings, everything should be available. That exhibit that your aunt has done should be available in every public school district, not just for Black students, but we have to start there.
Culture.
You know, because that's different from banning books.
That's right.
Other cultures to know too, that's true.
Going to ban duplicates, I mean, you know, models of inventions. And I'm sure once they find out that exists, that's what they'll look to. Listen, ladies, this has been really good. Yvonne, anything you want
Yes.
to add in terms of what people can do that would, you know, assist you? You know, but at the end of the day, we know when it comes to elected officials, you got to make them. Democracy is not a spectator sport. You need to understand the basics of, you know, what your responsibilities are as a citizen, because that's the only way you're going to make it happen. Similar to the things we've been talking about today in terms of all these things that are happening behind the scene that folks don't know about, and they need to come to light. But how do you make them come to light? There's certain things you have to know fundamentally. And unfortunately, we still have a lot to learn while we're fighting. So go ahead, Yvonne, it's on you.
Well, our history is extremely important. That's number one. We've got to continue to invest in our history and make sure that history is before our young people. That's critical. We have to invest in each other. And so this forum today helps us to get a view in terms of what we're doing individually and what we can perhaps do collectively. We need to sustain this conversation. And through this conversation, I believe action can take in place. I mean, we've talked about information that was shared today and how we can glean from this information to build capacity in different communities that we represent. So this was a sample today of what can be accomplished when we come together, not just talking, but having purpose to be able to support our collective good and our collective need. And as we stay connected, and as we are committed to serve each other, there should be some demonstration of how we can create a more healthy, productive community. So yes, I am interested in the Housing Act of 1949, 1954 amendment. I do want to go to Washington. I am interested in establishing a public and congressional hearing. And certainly as we continue to lobby for that, we hope that we'll get the support, believe that we will get the support. But then it's not just asking Congress. We have to ask each other. We need each other. And it starts with just who we are on this line today, how we can continue to support each other in the areas of identified need. And so it does begin with us, actually investing in us, preserving the integrity of who we are as a community, as individuals, and continue to invest in that because that's what we need. We need to become more cohesive and investing and get out of the individualism so much, but more into the collective well-being and how we work together as a community, as a tribe, actually, to continue to cultivate what's in our best interest. So I'd like to join this forum again, but again, it's about action items. Yes, we talk about issues, but what are the steps and what are the actions that we can take to improve, right? And then come back and say, we've accomplished this to date. So I look forward, Samantha, in talking with you. I want to learn more about the initiative going on in Washington, and see how we can glean from that. We have 2 publications, an exhibit that can have the potential to be placed in strategic locations in our country, as well as a publication that perhaps we can get in the hands of, that we'll believe that we'll get in the hands of school leaders to make sure that our young people have a roadmap for direction. So that's what I'm interested in. Yes, talk, yes, converse, yes, communicate with each other, but what's the action plan that we need to advance what's needed for the best outcome? So thank you.
I was going to ask you, what are the 3 things that people could do? And I'm just going to throw this out and you tell us, give us guidance. But, you know, Yvette Clarke, as I said, the congressperson, she may be open. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Maybe you might want to reach out to her office since she's already working at re-engineering the affordable housing area median income. And it's kind of, you know, could piggyback. And also Maxine Waters, since now that we know she's in charge of housing, to find out from her office and contact her office to find out. And maybe, you know, I think about like doing a model letter or a petition that people could sign if you could send it around. Or maybe send it to, or go on the when Black women, there's a listserv, and put a letter there. The easier you make it for people, the easier they can just take it and sign it. You know, we see those petitions that are done by color of change. They usually make it real easy. All people have to do is like maybe sign, or if nothing else, just say I agree and push the button. So something like that could be helpful to get more people. So when Maxine Waters and the congressperson, I mean, if this is what they're trying to do, and they know there's people out there, you know, going back to FDR, I always say he says, make us do it. If we don't make it happen, that's on us.
That's right.
That's on us.
I agree. The other thing that I'd like to get feedback on is what constitutes a model community. When we look at the welfare of our community, what does that look like? What is the ingredients that we need to assure the health, the welfare, the stability, the support of community? We need to make sure that we're undergirding our communities with the pillars and the foundation, you know, that's needed to make sure that our communities are healthy, are safe, and productive, right? So we want to be clear about what that looks like and how our tax dollar has to be used and redirected to assure the welfare of community, right? And go ahead,
finish. I'm too excited.
I'm just saying, I just want to say we need to build that model so that we're clear about that ingredient, right? And make sure that, you know, yes, different communities have different ways of expressing themselves, you know, and how they want to be seen, how they want to produce. But there should be some basic ingredients in place that each of our communities that have been devastated, decimated, and subverted, that we rebuild back with making sure that those pillars are clearly identified and that they are intact and are functioning and are held accountable, you know. So that's the other thing, is that not only just the investment, it's also the sustainability.
Well, right. A couple of things you said. One is that we already have models, what works for us, the ecosystems that we've had before. They may have to be, but we don't have to start from scratch. That's the point.
That's right.
There are models that we talked about earlier in this call that exist, and just to modify them, you know, update them may be helpful. Also, I like what you said about shaping the narrative, because we've been allowing other people to shape the narrative for about 40 years. And, right. You know, I think about things as simple as the term, you know, we use the term civil rights. We let somebody else make that determination. It was called freedom. And so the mindset of a freedom movement versus civil rights, that's a whole different impact on your whole mindset, your whole behavior. Like, are we seeking civil rights, or are we seeking freedom?
Right.
And freedom to do the things that you talked about. So I think that, you know, shaping our own narrative, understanding, shaping our own narrative. Then somebody, Claudette, put in, which is interesting, because I know there's been some problems with the appraisers in our community. She put in, check the national appraisers as to how property is being valued. That's something to consider. Thank you so much for that, Claudette. That's real interesting. How are they determining it? And there's been a lot of problems with the appraisers, which at some point, 97% of them are white in the country.
Not only that, but they don't value our communities the same as they do their own.
Exactly. That's my point.
And the other thing is, look at where Starbucks is investing in Wegmans. Find out why those are the drivers. What are the models they're using?
Okay. So yeah, we have there's a whole lot of information. We have this information we don't know. So people have to do their homework, because people are not just going to hand, you know, we already know if they destroyed the communities that were self-sufficient, right? What is their interest? Why would they just give us information? Now, they may give individuals information so that the individual, but if we're talking about looking at the collective, and what Yvonne's talking about, if she gets this amendment, that will serve people across generations, right? I mean, the next step is to get them to reimburse people, to give the restitution, but it's not just for her, it's the collective. This is major. This is major. To amend that is major, right? It was for one person, but the impact is a nationwide impact for us. And also we always have to be, you know, prepared for the blowback, because, you know, we always get blowback.
Linda?
Yes.
You have a hand, Jocelyn White.
Jocelyn, go ahead, speak.
You want to come on screen, Jocelyn?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you
so
much,
Jocelyn.
Ms. Patterson, for this wonderful, informative session.
Hi, Jocelyn.
I just want to mention my business, the Big Easy of Trenton, which is a restaurant. When Black women gather, have been there as a group, and we were grateful for their patronage. Hopefully they'll come back again. Opened the business in 2017. So far, we're filled with gratitude that we have made it through the pandemic. We serve comfort food, but no pork, and the vegetables do not have meat because a lot of people are vegetarians. So just happy to still be in business. For me as an entrepreneur, this is a marathon at a sprint pace. I'm coming from a background as an educator, so the learning curve has been incredible. But I'm just very grateful, you know, our omnipotent creator has blessed us, and we're just glad to be in the community. We outreach to the community. We give, we fund a group that takes young Black men to the historically Black colleges. Every year we fund them, and they come to our restaurant to have a meal before they go on their journey. So we're very active in the community. We do a coat giveaway to the local schools. So just trying to give back, not trying to, you know, take everything for ourselves. But one thing I also wanted to mention is that unfortunately, integration was our downfall because we were very, very self-sufficient. I mean, even when I look in the city of Trenton, before that happened, there were so many Black businesses that were in existence, and they're all gone. So when you talk about the collective, I think that is so important. We have to strengthen the Black family.
That's right.
There's so much that we have to do. But thank you so much for your presentation, and glad to hear about your grandfather. You know, and there's so many similar stories throughout our nation that we don't know. So thank you for sharing that information.
So great, Jocelyn. Thank you. Tell me the name of the restaurant again.
Big Easy of Trenton. I'll put it in the chat.
Yvonne, if you drive out, we can go down and see if you drive. I don't like to drive. If I can't walk, I'm not coming. So if
Jocelyn, this is an opportunity. Has Lieutenant Governor been to your restaurant?
Many times, because one of my dear friends from college, we went to Douglas College together, Joyce Wilson Harley. She's very close with Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver.
Sure, yes, absolutely.
Directed her to the restaurant. She comes there a lot. Before she goes back to Essex County, she would stop and get some food. So she's been there numerous times.
Well, good. That's good. And I know that her assistant, Cherry Bellamy.
Okay.
Cherry Bellamy is one of Lieutenant Governor's assistants, and you know, Cherry would be another one that I would invite. She's in Lieutenant Governor's office. She's actually from Newark. She lives in Maplewood now, but she's in Trenton, you know, several times a week. So I would reach out to Cherry Bellamy and invite Cherry to come. Cherry is very resourceful, and if it's not Lieutenant Governor, she can help steer, you know, other government leaders, you know, to campaign. Because one of the things I know that and I don't know the Lieutenant Governor is doing this, but to ask her to start highlighting women-owned business in the state of New Jersey, you know, and bring.
It's a campaign.
The restaurant was right around the corner from Lieutenant Governor's office.
Perfect. Well, that's wonderful. But just remember Cherry Bellamy, Jocelyn, and invite Cherry to come and you know, and help to network other government officials to come and support you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to add before we go, because you're talking about families, and I always talk about we've had over 50 years of the impact and the devastation, whether it's individual, collective, in terms of heroin, AIDS, and crack cocaine, the guns, and all of this. And one of the things has to do with the music, especially we talk about families. And what people don't know is that Black music was our superpower, and people knew it's our superpower. Not only that, for people who couldn't read, it was the literature of the masses. And so in that vein, particularly because you're talking about families, and I'm looking at, you know, I do adoptions for the state of New Jersey. And I know there's so many young people, foster care students, children who have nobody. They have nobody, but we need to be mindful of that when we're thinking about what's happening to children. I say that because on the 29th, and I actually put it in the listserv for When Black Women Chat, on the 29th of March at the Newark Public Library, and it'll be on Facebook too for those who are out of the area. It's going to be, well, the name of the book that I took it from was What Happened to the Soul, Music, the Weaponization of Hip Hop. It's going to be co-sponsored by the Friends of the James Brown African American Room, which was there to make sure that our collection in the library was not destroyed. The Newark Public Library and the Association of Black Women Lawyers of New Jersey. I say that because in 1972, there's something called the Harvard Report, and it was about co-opting Black music. And that's had a sizable influence on our children. You know, we have music of love and for resistance, and that's not the music we generally have. There's underground music that serves that, but they don't really make the chart. So I'm really inviting everybody, if Garfield hasn't put it on, but I'll put it back in the listserv. And everybody's invited to a public conversation on the legacy of hip hop, a weapon of resistance or co-optation of a generation. I actually have Mr. Kramer, who wrote the book, but I also have a psychiatrist who's in the Pennsylvania system who's going to talk about how the music industry is heavily invested in the prison system. They seek to make money. So the music contributes to some of the chaos we see that ends people up in the carceral system. Also, they're going to talk about how the music industry brought in people from the pornography industry. When you see these videos of the young ladies that don't exactly demonstrate sacredness of women, when you see that, you know, be mindful that the pornography industry is also involved in the music industry. So there's a lot of things going on in that industry, and they realized that if we change the music, which we saw since, I think hip hop starts initially as like having fun, and then as the economy changes, it changes. There's a gentleman who's he's a professor over at CUNY College who actually knew Tupac, and he talks about how Tupac, he was supposed to meet with Tupac the day after. The day after, and Tupac was killed. And what people don't know, Tupac and Biggie were in the process of trying to figure out how they can control the distribution of their music. And if you don't know, Tupac's mom was a Black Panther who actually defended herself pregnant with Tupac in the courtroom. So, you know, I'm saying this to say that when we're talking about family and we're talking about some of the challenges we have, we need to be mindful of the influence of this industry. It's not a culture. It's an industry that tries to hide behind culture, but it's not part of our culture. So, you know, that actually I'll send back out there. I think Yvonne, I may have sent it to you so you can get it out to your folks. So anyway, well, anybody have any other comments they want to make? Judy,
Yes.
Jocelyn, Yvonne?
Yeah, Linda, this is Kay. People are asking, please put your information in the chat again.
I just did.
Oh, you did? I see.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Jocelyn, you know everything.
So this is Miss Higgy, everybody. How are you all?
Wonderful.
I miss
Hello,
it.
Miss Higgy. How are you? How are you, Helen? Great to hear your voice.
Hi, I'm good. Miss Patterson, I'm sorry I missed most of your program, but it's being recorded, so I will pick it up. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I know it was informative. I heard you on the interview with Linda on WBAI, so I already know it was good.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure and an honor. Thanks for giving us this opportunity. There's a lot of synergy here, and there's a lot that we can accomplish just staying together and staying connected. You know, following this roadmap that's been presented tonight. It's wonderful.
Helen, you're right on time to close us out.
Yes, I know you all hear that. I'm at the airport in case you all are wondering where all this noise is.
Right on time to close us out.
Oh, yeah.
I am. So what do we do? So Kilpia,
Black women gather.
Wait, you have one hand up. I'm not sure who that is. You might want to take that last one. Is somebody on the phone, 862? You have a question?
Somebody was just speaking.
Samantha.
Go ahead.
Oh, can I ask my question before we close out?
Sure.
Very quickly,
yeah.
please. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, to be quick. We're doing our Women in Business Expo on May the 6th, and we're looking for a keynote speaker. Is anyone on the call connected with any celebrities or like a high profile person? Like we would love to have Iyanla Vanzant, or if you all know someone where you have their direct contact phone number. We're trying to find a keynote speaker or a celebrity to make an appearance. I can give you my number if you know someone who is
So you can
we're
leave
not-
the information, but I have to tell you that when we do know those people, we're inviting them to speak with us. So,
oh, well, that's
but
wonderful.
yeah, we can talk. Send me your information. If I can help you in some way, I will. But I'm working on I don't know if Linda told you, we're trying to get oh, okay, yeah. We're trying to get somebody, we've had her before, Sonia Sanchez. We're trying to get her back for next week. So ladies, please stay tuned and be ready for that. It's gonna be a great discussion. But call me. Who was that talking? That was Miss Wall?
Samantha.
Yeah, give me let's talk. If I can help you, I will.
Okay, thank you.
Are you 862? Is that you? Or no? Is 862
My
is a
phone
phone?
number. My
was
phone
that you?
number is
No.
Okay.
916-410-16.
No, somebody with the phone.
Samantha, I can get your number from your aunt and I'll share it with Helen.
And
Okay, perfect.
I got
Yeah,
it.
my aunt Viola, she has my number. Okay.
Right.
So somebody with the phone number 862, or did you want to speak, or are you just raising your hand and don't know you're raising your hand?
You're muted.
Do *6 and we can hear you. 862 going once, 862 going twice, 862, we can't hear you. So, Kilty, go ahead,
Something
862.
about Gullah. Oh, you want to say something about Gullah trip, Miss?
Yeah, so for those of you who are still interested in going on the Gullah trip, we have a wonderful group already assembled, but if other women are interested in going, please reach out. You have until Wednesday to make a deposit, and final payments are due by April 17th. And the trip is May 24th through May 29th. It's going to be 5 days of Black history. Ms. Patterson, you should come on with us. But it's going to be a great trip. We're doing, as you know, we're doing Charleston on Thursday. We're doing Savannah and Tybee Island on Friday, and the Gullah Festival activities for Friday night through Sunday evening. So those of you who have traveled with us before know that it's going to be a great time. So if you're still interested, there's still a little time. So Ms. Patterson, I look forward to listening to this video and then speaking with you privately and seeing how we can, and Linda, of course, how, what we can do to move it forward. I heard you say that we have to work in a collective, and that's exactly the truth, right? And we need to start looking out for Black people and Black people only. Like, if we don't take care of ourselves, who will? So,
That's right.
Yeah, so anyway, it's a beautiful thing. So
Well, Helen's she's here and I can step to the side for a minute.
Linda, thank you so much for covering for me on Sunday. And you guys know, Linda, what's your Sunday when you and Barbara are going to talk about reparations?
The week after next, next week
The
we're
19th and then the 26th.
The 26th we're doing, and I think I mentioned to him earlier that the young lady who filed the first lawsuit when she was a paralegal for reparations, and the outcome they just got recently, it was a conservative judge that basically said, this is a case she filed in 2004. A conservative judge said, and she'll speak to it when she comes on the 26th, is that companies that don't acknowledge that they were involved in the trade, in the chattel slave trade, you can file a suit against them for fraud. Now that's major. So if they're trying to hide, that's major. So she's actually going to be our guest on the 26th. And she'll be talking about reparations. And I talked to her a little bit about what you're doing, Yvonne, in terms of restitution and how the umbrella is reparations, but there are different things underneath that. And the reason why we're doing Pan-Africanism is because, all of us were brought from the place and we went to different places. So looking at how do we leverage all these different interests around the issue of reparations, a flow chart, because there are different interests that people have. People have been working in different years. So how do we put this all together to leverage the strength as opposed to letting them pull a COINTELPRO agent provocateur thing on us?
So I gotta say, G Simpson is Garfield, and thank you so much, Garfield, for dropping a nugget in the chats for people to leave a donation. I said thank you, Miss Simpson. I didn't put it together. Thank you, Garfield. And on that note, Kilthea, can you put us on take everybody off spotlight, put us on gallery view so we can do our exit, so we can show Miss Patterson what we do here.
Thank you for all your help. All I had to do is plug in.
Yes, Kilthea and Linda, thank you so much for covering.
I can't figure out how to take Linda off.
Just say you can remove all spotlights.
Right. And Helen just was reason why she's in New Jersey. I just want to say,
oh yeah, that's right. Go ahead,
I want to say that Helen that came in New Jersey from Florida this morning. I picked her up. I may have said this earlier. She came in for Andre Gatling's mother's 100th. She turned 100 today. So Helen flew up from Florida this morning, and she's on her way back to Florida. But she came up just for the celebration of someone who turned 100 years old today.
Oh, wonderful.
And it was a lovely celebration. May we all be so lucky to see 100. But on that note, thank you so much, everybody. And what do we say here when Black women gather?
Amazing things happen.
Wow.
Amazing things happen. And I'm sure it was another amazing Sunday, and I look forward to several more. And on that note, we're going to say goodnight, stop recording, call it a